Lost the connection there. I had to go live, so I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes till people get back in this thing. I want to give everybody 3 hours here, so I'm gonna go until 9:15. I'm gonna give everybody another 45 minutes. So I'm just gonna wait a little bit so everybody comes in, but and retract what I was saying. See if I can. Okay. I see some people getting in here. Mainly talking about pedagogy. Quartis was asking some really good questions, about who we teach and how we teach. As long as we get it into the person that it's not always about themselves, but also what they create, and what they have, and there has to be a humanity about it as well, and I think if you have an opportunity cost, we always choose the younger student over the older student. Right. That's Peace, Quartis. Quartis, I have a plus lesson on interactive planning. So I'm gonna give that as another lesson, like a whole special class with that. You know what I'm saying? Where I could go into that, and because I have stuff to add to that original plus lesson, and I could give it to, and that's gonna be before the end of the year because I want people to go into the new year planning. I always finish everything. I try to work to finish everything I was intended to do during the year, as many goals as I set out, and then I start the new year with as many. So, so I'm going to go through all that. I'm going to go through all that, Quartis, but not in this session, probably next week, probably next week. I will do that. You know what I mean? Because I got to go through the plus lesson, add some things. I don't know if I should make it a part 2. I would like to make it a part 2. I don't know if I have enough to make it a part 2, or I just revise the first one better, to make that decision. So I don't know. I'll figure that out, but it'll be useful because that's important to me too, so because the way that I have lived this year, altering the plan, fixing the plan, and still keeping the same goals has been a real challenge. And many things have been consistent, other things have been as well. Just the speed of things slows down, they change, so how do you deal with that? So anyway, I'm going to go through all that, you know what I mean? Continuing on with the questions, right? The questions that Self I Build had sent. I was also, by the way, if you have Disney Plus, check out the docuseries. They have a lot. Of course, everything is there. It's fun. There's a lot of fun movies and cartoons to watch with the kids and everything. Of course, some cartoons I don't agree with, though. There's a lot of, alternate lifestyle shit and, a lot of gender bending cartoons that I don't really bear witness to at all. So definitely do now is when you put cartoons for these kids. You know what I mean? Start showing you stuff that I'm not even showing my kid that, but they want to show that stuff already. You know what I mean? But so discretion in all things. But there's a lot of great stuff there. All right. He asked me, what differs in your teaching approach when teaching original people versus Caucasian people? Immediately I would think not much because I'm honest with both about what they are. I tell you who you are, but original people have different realities than Caucasian people, just like different original people, meaning original people from different ethnicities, is really a thing. It's not really the shade. It's the different ethnicities. And of course, that comes into play as well. You know what I'm saying? But different original people have different experiences. So it's all the experiences that come into getting a knowledge of self. So the knowledge of self is always approached in a unique way because we're dealing with the knowledge of self, themselves. How do they deal with it? You know, so it certainly teaches, it certainly changes. I've never had, you know, he also asks, does your style of teaching change if in a cipher of primarily Caucasian versus that of original people? Yes. You know, I have not taught a classroom setting in a law school of Mecca ever with primarily Caucasian people, but I have many Caucasian people that have come in to learn. But I have been in many ciphers in real life, in the industry and whatnot, where I'm educating many white people at the same time and basically representing us among the white people, among those white people. I said the white people, right? It definitely changes because it becomes more, it becomes even more simple. It becomes more articulate. It becomes something where there's a lot of I have to do a lot of requisite building. In other words, a lot of stuff that our people would understand automatically, I have to go back and rewind. When I teach original people, you're not rewinding to tell them things that they know. It's to show them that look at the way you've been reacting to these real things. But these real things, situations, realities, oppressive realities, civilization, righteousness, the knowledge of self, right? The realities of civilization, um, a lot of the original people are fooled to think that their oppression is taking them away from great civilization. And so we have to show them that no, this is it. With white people, they are actually at the peak of their civilization. This is it for them. They are not oppressed. They have, if this is the way the world is, they still have the most benefits, right? They have real privilege. Other original people do not have privilege. There is no such thing as white privilege for other original people. There are allowances is different than privilege, because if it was privilege, it would be you could cash it in at any time. The white man can cash in his privilege at any time. Original people are have allowances, and it is always relative to which other original people are around. So I have no real allowances given to me. I have never had allowances and privileges given to me. But when I am in a room, though, with other original people that may be darker, people allow me to maybe speak more, to be more comfortable with me instead. You see? This is a reality, and this is not privilege. This is allowances. You know what I mean? And we have to take note of these things. You know what I mean? So you take note of the cipher that you're in, what they know. You know what I mean? Right? And that the realities of civilization, the realities of oppression, they really don't understand, no matter how much they think they've read. They don't understand how it works. You know? So the ciphers are always different, how you engage them. You know what I mean? How you engage them. And again, one thing that always remains the same, nobody deserves or ought to be taught by you unless you are doing the knowledge to them. You got to do the knowledge to who you're talking to. You see what I'm saying? Who are they? What are they? You know, why are they there? You know, so your teaching style has to be one that is engaging in getting them to open up about who they are so that you know who you're dealing with. I asked a lot of questions of Michael Muhammad Knight when he first came into my classroom. See? And then I deduced, though, that he should be kicked out of my classroom. See? And go learn somewhere else or with someone else, because he's not going to learn in my classroom. Absolutely not. And you know what? I was right. Okay? He's a devil, and he made products of devilishment. Good for him. I called it, and I didn't call it because I'm some kind of super prophet of mystical proportions. It's because I did the knowledge to him. I engaged him the way I engage all potential students. Right? I did the knowledge to them. I asked them things. I asked them what their intentions were, all these things. And their own fraudulence, hopefully, would expose themselves. In that case, it did. Right? How would you raise your children differently in either environment? I think that our children aren't necessarily in one environment or the other. They can be Like I have a child that goes to a private school, my youngest. So it's a very uppity school, very expensive. I really don't. I think they're good teachers, but I haven't seen the worth of it. You know what I mean? I mean, they still, to me, like when they celebrate Christmas or Thanksgiving, it's basically like a high. It's like any other school. Like they're still stealing. They're still teaching archaic and incorrect history. So how advanced is that? Like it's still backward to me. However, the truth is that my child then is in two different types of environment. So what you're teaching your child though is that they will be in different environments and people raised differently and will think differently, and it will be based on the child, you know? So your child is always going to bring back wherever they're from, wherever they go, behaviors that are incorrect because they think other children get to behave this way. You know what I mean? And so compare and contrast is always important to do. You know what I mean? Getting them open to that. How? Let me see if there. I'm still looking on this. Let me see if there are any questions on that. All right, so nobody's asking me any questions. So I will continue with Self I Build's questions. All right, he also asked me how. Hold on, I have a couple of texts here. Let me just see if that's my. All right, let me see. All right. All right. How do you properly assess if a person needs civilizing, righteousness, knowledge of self, science of everything in life, love, peace, and happiness? Well, I'll say this though. The levels, you know what I'm saying? So it's funny, somebody could know a sound like they know 120, right? Like our resident freak, and don't really have an understanding of anything because they think they're not a student. You know, how disrespectful is that? Um, assessing means this, like it becomes easier when you realize how much time you have and who's there. And when you teach at a law school, you're teaching voluntarily. And in my years, I'm teaching in a cipher where I don't know everybody. I'm not teaching. It's not the neighborhood. It's a little different than neighborhood. It's a place people go to from many places and come to from many places. So it's not just knowing the neighborhood and being in tune with the neighborhood. So what happens is this, right? Or the people in your building and the kids that you're teaching in your building is much different. So what happens is that assessing by doing the knowledge, asking the right questions, asking a set of questions, and having things a very good layout of what you are about, so that they can make their own decision and give them the decision to stay or to go. That is how you defend yourself, by getting as much knowledge as you can, and then also able to see where a person's at. Do they need to be exposed to the heinousness of this world, civilization? Do they realize how oppressive the societies and need really only ready for some righteous things to do? Don't eat this, etc., right? Righteousness, the ways and means. Or are they ready to get this knowledge of self and this is what they want? Then you can take them through civilization, righteousness, and the knowledge of self all at once. And the science of everything in life, I've had students that have gone through 120 and this and that, and they just want to add on. They just want to get better methods of being a 5%, of teaching and building and other plans and stuff. So it's a higher level of building. And again, you can only assess by, surveying. He also asks, in other words, to be able to give what is needed and not waste time on that which is needed by said individual. Yeah, you always have to learn, right? You always have to be studying, seeing and it's always a test. Sometimes you teach people. Sometimes you teach people. The worst thing is, like, I never like teaching people the things that they already know. You know what I'm saying? So I even in the physical classroom, I take breaks to say, do you guys know this or don't? You know what I'm saying? And if they do and other students don't, I have to say it again. So I try to say it in a unique way, something different. And you adapt different things, different bits of understanding that you can put in there that highlight, and also as a teacher, you always want to highlight what is the truth of things, and then also what is your added understanding. You know what I'm saying? That's why, like, when I teach power and I also teach about refinement, I don't necessarily demand that you have refinement in your degree, but I show you that if you use it, this is how I see it, and this is the history of it, and how there is a difference in it. I don't just ignore the history that came along with that. So that's something to also take note of, right? With knowledge of how do we not become too rigid with our approach to our own household. Um, I take a pause here because I don't think that I will ever not be rigid. You know, I would have to say, I guess, right? Because I think this, right? I'll give you an honest, intimate statement. I've had two relationships for my two children that lasted over 10 years each. So clearly, even though I was a writer and editor that was never made the amount of money that my talents merited, right? Essentially, in many respects, though, I'm a starving artist in many respects, you know, literally. Um, I think that with the rigidness that I have is also it exudes out. So I may not be holding everybody to the disciplinary standards I have that show little, let's just keep it real here, monetary fruit, right? And yet they still continue to get done. I think that this is a level of rigidness that I don't think I'll ever get rid of. You know what I'm saying? Where I adapt to letting go of things just because they won't make much money. I mean, it's reflected in the way that, and the reason is because it's always been my nature, but it's so cemented in me, whether it's in hip hop, and then certainly even fomented more in the knowledge of stuff that you do this as a poor righteous teacher. You're willing to sacrifice, and in my life, that's just been the sacrifice of it. You know what I'm saying? I have excelled in fields that don't make great money, and do I continue to excel in that, or do I abandon it? And obviously, because of that, I don't. So you know, it leads to a rigidity. So I think that in the household, you want people to explore. You know, you want the children to explore. I certainly don't think that I have been rigid with my children. I have allowed them to explore. You know, I really, my oldest child, I didn't really teach her like one is knowledge, two is wisdom. I didn't. I showed her what it meant, and showed her like when you need these tools, they're here for you. You know, I taught her that way. You know what I mean? And that's only because I've been gifted in a way to teach where I could teach things without you thinking that you know it. You know what I mean? It doesn't need the traditional format, you know? And I did that because I wasn't able to have my children with me in my own household. You know what I mean? So what happens is that, let's say for now, I live my own rigid, intense disciplinary life. You know what I'm saying? And it's great. It's really great. I don't impose it on my children though. But I do let them know that you will have to learn to live with certain disciplines that you will see me engage in. So like with little children, like my little one, you're gonna have to wait a little bit to play with me. There are certain things I'll have to get done. And he goes, well, why do you have to do that workout? Isn't that because I am a martial artist? You know, I have to read. Well, you know, I haven't read, so I have to read eventually. You know what I mean? So, and I'll read later. You know what I mean? Or while you're doing that and playing, I'm going to do this. You know, in certain times, right? So you try to engage in that way, and that's a level of discipline, and it's always going to feel like rigidity. You know, so I hope that helps to think about it. I just don't always see it as bad. Um, but he questioned, meaning, do we let the young come to us for the knowledge, or do we teach them out of the womb, regardless if they don't understand it, but knowing potentially in time they may find it of use? A lot of people do teach that way, so they could, and you know, I can be real. They get to show off their kids and say, "Look, my kid is like 2 years old, and they quoted the math." It's not the way I teach. I've never taught that way. You know what I'm saying? Um, I've never taught that way because I want to find their natural talents. Though I feel like they're such different individuals. It's just never been in me, and I think that the talents that I've come to exude aren't talents that were ever in my family. So, you know, so I don't know if I would do it that way. You know what I mean? Right. Um, so I like to let the child develop, you know, and my style of teaching has always been to give them little bits that they understand as opposed to things that they memorize. I think a grown student is more capable with that dangerousness of learning. You know, the danger of learning, like where they can validate the teacher, and so they can continue to learn many things that seem confusing or not immediately known, understood. Right? That's because the older student can discern whether this will be a good road. We don't need to do that with the child. They have to take our road with so many things. So with like really special things, you can take the time to develop them slowly. Right? All right. The God continued. He said, "My inner voice says it has helped me immensely, and I want my babies to have it in order to be better prepared at a younger age to handle life's challenges, so they can be much wiser than I was at that same age." Yeah, yeah. There are things that you have to have times when you sit down and teach a formal lesson. You know what I mean? And other times where you just let things happen. You know, right? The God also asks, "What are some of the best self-assessment tools that you found?" Self-assessment tools. That means for yourself, how you assess yourself. Chronicling, having a journal, um, writing about how you eat, how you train, how you study, how you are engaging people vocally. Like you write about these things. You know what I mean? When you work out, measure your workout. You know what I'm saying? Measure how long it goes. All of these things. Like the more the more statistics, the more information you gauge about yourself, the more you understand about yourself. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's important to have a journal with your own thoughts. You know? I don't care if you want nobody to ever read it again. Write it out anyway. After you finish the journal, if you feel uncomfortable with it, burn it. I don't know, but it needs to come out though, so you can feel comfortable expressing how you are to yourself. Right? The God said a tool that helps one to understand themselves on a subconscious, conscious, and even levels beyond. Meaning, people being able to get to the root of why one does or doesn't do a thing. The only way to do that again is like to be able to take a portrait of yourself. Just like when I train at the martial arts, I record myself training, and it allows me to promote my martial arts, but to potential students, right? Because it is a financial endeavor. But I had done it originally because I wanted to see how I was moving. Because there's a word, I really have to find the book where I learned this because I keep forgetting. But there is a scientific word for the difference between how you perceive how you move and how you're actually moving. And with people that know the martial arts really well, they're pretty much moving exactly how they perceive they move. With people that don't, they're moving in a way that looks totally different than they think, you know. So they might be thinking like, "Oh, I did that. I did these moves real fly," but if you record it, they're like, "Yo, I look horrible," and that's the thing, you know what I'm saying? So, right? And with everything, no one's perfect with it, though. You know what I'm saying? It takes a long time. That's perfect the art. But how? What are the ways that we can hold up a mirror to ourselves? And that becomes journalizing. You know, I also think making the arts. You know, when people make songs, when people make poetry, they also put artistic statements about where they are at moments in life. And it may not be good art, like art they'll share, and some of it may be great, and it reflects where they were. You know, and it also shows things. That's why everybody should try to engage in the arts, even if they're not good at it, even though it's as a learning tool and a tool for fun. Right. All right. 793rd, you said always impactful with your practical applications and knowledge and wisdom and the formatting, no matter what speed, appreciated. Peace is great. Okay, that's peace. That's peace. I appreciate that, 783. I appreciate that. All right, here's another heavy question. I don't even know how to. What is your approach to studying? How do you distinguish the best part, the best, the poor, and worst parts of a thing? One of the obsessive, rigid, disciplinary aspects of my life is that I very rarely do anything too long for fun, you know? And like, think about it, right? I seem to be always having fun. People see me take pictures with MCs, artists. I interview them. This is all a lot of fun. It's great. It's a fulfilling thing, but it also is very functional. It's functional to my career. And then I end up reading and writing things that are fun to me, but they also teach me things. If I read poetry, I read novels, they also teach me things. There's very little I do that isn't functional or useful to me. And sometimes, is it because I'm finding usefulness in them, or is because I'm only picking things that and only dealing with things that will be useful for me, right? So I could get lost in that, in deciding which is which there. You know what I mean? But my approach to studying is that everything can be studied, and I just prioritize things. My main approach to studying is through reading books. That is my because it's my most fun thing to do, and because I'm a writer, so it's always through the books that I begin with. You know what I mean? Even like when I spent time, and all the years I spent time with elders and stuff, the books were always a foundation. You know, the written word is always where I go into. You know what I'm saying? And people that can say, but like, you know, we say 120 this, 120 is the written word. You know, none of us was talking to Elijah, right? So for me, what kicks off studying for me is always the book. You know, books. You know, it's always going to be books. That's just me personally. I'm a reader, and it's because I'm a writer. So it's simultaneously perfecting my craft, studying my craft, but also learning that way. You know what I mean? You said he also asked me, how do I distinguish the best, the poor, and worst parts of a thing? I think it's in the best part, it's really about seeing what is most useful. And sometimes that's easy to distinguish because you see what you want to do and what allows you to get there the best way. In the poor part, that's usually what we could develop and what we're not developing. You know what I mean? And what you feel bad about, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. That's usually what your poor part is. And the worst part is like where you say, like, I got the moments in life where you're like, yo, I did that, and maybe it went too long, or all of it was completely like wasteful, you know? So, you know, if you're honest with yourself, you'll know when you feel like you wasted time, you know? It happens a lot with me. Like, I watch a movie and I think it's a creativity, but then I get antsy, and I'm like, this might be like a real waste of time, you know? And even if it wasn't, I always feel like it's a minimal output. It's just the way that I am with watching TV and stuff. So then I immediately have to dive into reading or writing or something else, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's how it is though. You know what I mean? I think the most fun I have, and again, I can see how functional it is when I, you know, just have fun with my children. You know what I mean? And even then it's like useful. So I don't really have parts of my life that are complete waste. You know what I mean? It's very, very difficult to find that. You know? Yeah, and he also said, especially with the the immense body of information is at our fingertips, how do you sift through the BS properly? Um, Traditional reference materials. How is a reference made? How is a reference authorized? You know what I'm saying? And then learning to study in such a way where you have trusted references, like people that are honorable and trusted references in science and mathematics, you know, right? So, like, for example, like in many ways, when I study health and nutrition and stuff, Gary Null is an absolute source for me. You know, the more I've studied him, the more I've verified that it is completely trusted and has enhanced my lifestyle. However, when he goes into other social issues, I can see him stumble. And then that's okay because it still has good insights. But I've been able to take the best part because I'm engaging in what he does the best. And so I even get usefulness out of what I think sometimes are his own perceptions of things, right? Because he's a respected source. Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? I'm naming popular people. Neil deGrasse Tyson has great insights about science and how to teach science. So I'm always listening, always, right? Whether it's his books or his Star Talk Radio, his podcast. However, when he gets into history, I know that he'll always be off because he only deals with the origins of this Western world, right? So you find out what parts people are impaired in, and you let that go. You know what I mean? Right. As a teacher for so many years, how do you not get emotionally attached to a desired outcome of your student? Um, I've had students die on me. Have students become 85. Have students become devils. Have people come learn with me that aren't my students that have done devilishment, that do devilishment, like we say right now, that I think is devilishment. Um, I learned to let it go. When I finished teaching, I realized that I could do more, and I try to do more and learn it as a discipline thing. Um, I could teach this individual better if I do more with this, right? And then I leave it at that. You know what I mean? I know it sounds I compartmentalize, but it's more like, okay, Curry finished this game against this player, right? This player, I didn't shoot this well against this defender. All right, on to the next game. But when I'm back to that defender, I will do these things differently, right? But let it go. This is how I deal with things. You know what I'm saying? Um, I would like to think it has given me a sanity. You know, I would say that the biggest challenge in teaching at a law school in Mecca has been these last 2 years because I haven't been able to be at law school Mecca, and a law school Mecca hasn't drawn as many students as I usually get. You know what I mean? And for various reasons. You know what I mean? I think it's a combination of the COVID, vaccine mandates, um, the social media getting bigger and bigger, and more of a virtual world people are in. A whole bunch of a whole host of things. The religiosity of certain um, people in our nation that take the forefront and they're completely religious. You know what I mean? I think a lot of things. You know what I mean? And that has been more of a drain on me than anything as far as my detachment. You know what I mean? But it is certainly detachment. Um, how do you distinguish the genuine student versus the insincere student? I have love for all the students, immense love. You know what I mean? Um, Even if I were able to meet Freak one day, right, who's been the buffoon of this night's session, um, if he would, humble himself and realize that we are always students, um, even then some kind of sincerity could be found. But in this class session that I'm answering these questions, you see the epitome of the insincere student. Sometimes it'll be blatant like that, where they think they're not a student. What the fuck you here for? Why would you be in a class? You're teaching me? Because if you're not a student, then that means you're teaching me, and I haven't learned shit from you. You know what I mean? I've learned that I'm disgusted. I've learned that that kind of mentality it should be spat on by the 85 out there. You know what I mean? That's what I think they should do. If they hear that shit come out of your mouth, that's what I think. So the genuine student from the insincere student, sometimes you let them expose themselves by what they do. I mean, I have a feel for this. A lot of times I know who's going to come back into my classroom. I know who's not going to come back. I know who's going to come back. And it's not always a negative thing. Sometimes people get what they need from me and then they move on. That's all they needed. You know what I mean? And they may not even know it then, but they use it. And sometimes they get other things in other ways from me because in my life, I've been able to share in many forms, So my student is not always directly in front of me, right? But the simplest way to find a genuine versus the insincere student, engage him in the assignment. You know, engage him in the assignment. Another question. Also, how do you assist a student to become a teacher? It's about in the practice of them explaining their builds. The better that they can share their builds and articulate is the genius of a teacher. After that, all they have to do is have a love for the student to be able to really engage individuals one-on-one, you know, right? And the ability to simplify concepts, you know, and the ability to have unique understanding that shows the student that there are things that you're learning, but there's also something special that you're learning from me. You know what I mean? All right. So another question. In your opinion, what traits does a sincere student possess? You know, the ability to do the assignment, the ability to listen, the willingness to be wrong at any moment, um, the ability to every consistently develop the next question, and the tireless pursuit of good questions, challenging questions, um, you know, and being engaged in study outside of the classroom, and bringing in new ideas. You know, experiment using the classroom as a laboratory, experimenting with high explosives, things that they shouldn't be doing in the public, but that can use that classroom space. You know, and the traits of a good teacher. I think that a good teacher is a good listener, answers their questions, but also leaves a space for them to question and to also demand that they prove these things on their own. You know what I mean? That was the last question. Um, I think that might be the hardest thing. Like, what is a good teacher? You know, I've spent more than half my life working to that answer. You know what I mean? Um, so you know, it's something that I think about a lot. What makes a good teacher? I think that I'm trying to take the people that taught me so well. I'm trying to get what they learned. You know, Seagung Bobby Whitaker, how he taught me. You know what I mean? In an accumulative kind of way, finding out where I was and then adding a new move to it, adding a new idea. You know, so this way of learning about where I'm at, right? He'd go 180 moves and I do stuff. And then he sees where I'm at, how I'm moving. Okay, now here's something to add to that. And it's always a cumulative learning based on assessments. You know, that's an example I learned from Seagung Bobby. You know, knowledge me, always being able to never leave you completely satisfied as a student. Always have you wanting to learn more, needing to learn more. You know what I'm saying? Needing to work at new answers and new questions. You know, my college mentor and lifelong friend, Dr. David Travelso, um, always respecting the level I'm at to say that that is a worthy thing to engage in. That is a worthy thing to study, you know, and helping and offering forums to the student. That's what I learned from him. You know, a teacher gives forums. They don't just give answers. They give forums for the student to engage themselves. And this is something that a lot of teachers don't even know how to do. You know what I mean? How do you develop forums for students that have certain abilities? And also, we're teaching our youth to empower themselves. So how do we offer these forums? You know, we're just giving, I want to teach you what I know. I know knowledge of self and you get knowledge of self. But what are the forums that we give them? You know, this is important, right? Right. So how do we give them, how do we develop a forum for them? So if we're teaching them writing, do we give them a forum where they can share their writing? If we teach them martial arts, do we give them a forum where they can apply it to life? That doesn't mean like we go out and show them how to kill things, but like how do we help them engage where it has a meaning in their life, in building peace and building structure? You know what I mean? So building forms is what I learned from my mentor, my college mentor and lifelong friend, Dr. David Degrasse. Save your knowledge, a master at the curriculum, at the way to teach classrooms of students. You know what I mean? That teaching this knowledge itself is also like a jazz singer that we teach. You know, we teach different ways. You know, in different means. We take different approaches. You know what I mean? And we can teach a level of people at all different levels, because if we teach what is known by other students but not known by some, we're engaging the bottom student and prioritizing the one with the least understanding. But having a new approach will show a level of pedagogy, a different way of teaching to that student that already knows the information. And I learned that from Savor Knowledge. You know, I explained it my own way. This jazz singer style, right? The improvisational approach to each pedagogical session, each teaching session. But you know, that's what I learned from him, and countless other things. I go on and on. You know what I mean? You go on and on. But it was a really great set of courses. So this class ends up being like a perfect example of pedagogy. You know what I mean? And Knowledge Allah, absolutely. You said it. So of course we're forever students. Always, always. You know, when I let everyone go here, I'm going to write a little bit, but I'm also going to end up going to read. And I'm not reading things. I read things. I read things I may have read before, but I'm nearly always reading something new. How was that not being a student? And it's, you know, it's massively fulfilling. You asked, now as time goes on, do you notice that you learn best in different ways than you used to? I think what happens, the more I teach, the more I learn from teaching. That's what I found over the years, that I keep realizing that I learn more from teaching others countless times. You know what I mean? But it's very hard to say. You know what I'm saying? It's very hard to say because I've always taken different methods. You know what I'm saying? Different methods of learning. Um, like for example, in the martial arts, I've been able to learn from many teachers, but I've also been, since I was given a great understanding of what martial arts is and kung fu, I'm able to learn from a lot of different sources that most people wouldn't get much out of. So I could watch videos of other masters doing certain things and I could get a lot more out of it than another person would. So like different ways. Like in the beginning of my training, I got very little from videos, very little from books, almost nothing from martial arts books. And now I get a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? And it's because I have more of an understanding because I spend so much time physically learning with my teacher. Right? So it's all those things. You know what I'm saying? It's all those things. Right? So a lot of it is developing the best ways that you've always used, right? But also maximizing them or going back to them. Going back to them. You know what I mean? Now, as I said, that's a good reference dealing with martial arts. Do you think that some styles conflict with others? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Um, Wing Chun can be very rigid. You know what I'm saying? Um, it doesn't it doesn't favor using the body unpredictably, right? It doesn't favor, so it doesn't favor adaptability, and yet it has perfect striking and perfect blocking for even the least athletic individual, right? Which is something that goes beyond a lot of other fighting arts, you know, like boxing and stuff. You know, you really got to be fit to be a good boxer. I don't care what anybody says. You know, you got to get those good punches, and if you miss or if you have no power, you're open. So a lot of these things demand different things. You know what I mean? right? So they do conflict. You know what I'm saying? What doesn't conflict is the nature to me of kung fu. It's always finding the circular nature and the nature of harmony with every single art. And a lot of my students, when I teach them, that's what they're getting out of it. You know what I mean? So the way people teach Wing Chun, but not the way that I teach it. You know what I'm saying? So there were certain things that I do that are different. You know what I'm saying? And it's because I don't keep just with the simple format of that. You know what I mean? Um, the way some Wing Chun practitioners practice, they are practicing only, for example, to fight one individual in front of them, and that loses a lot of things. So I think that people's interpretation of Wing Chun too, it's not really Wing Chun. It's that they haven't applied it to real fight styles and to real fight situations. Same with boxing though. You know, people think boxing is this and that, but it's all one-on-one stuff. You know, and they don't really show a boxer how to fight many men. You know, what would happen with that? You know what I mean? How do you fight long, short, and whatnot? You know what I mean? How do you fight with somebody that has the ability to attack your legs? Boxing has nothing for that. Like they don't have anything to say. What if somebody is that agile that has the ability to attack your legs? And not just like a sweep kick, but engage your legs. You know, go in between them. Crash them from the inside. You know what I'm saying? Not just like I'm not talking about just sweeping like MMA stuff, because that's some of those guys are such great athletes that they have terrible form. In other words, they have things that are so athletic that if they don't do it right, they could recover. And in real life, that's not how it would go. You know what I'm saying? Right? So, you know, that's what I mean. Like, but it's a lot. There's a lot to say with that. There's things in Wing Chun that I think are rigid, and there's things in Wing Chun that I think are beautifully fluid. You know, and my tendency, for me, this is me. My tendency is to keep the parts that are fluid. You know, whereas others don't. You know what I'm saying? Because in a real fight, nobody cares about what style you have. What matters is that it's effective. So you are not fighting with your style. You're fighting with the things you learned and the adaptability that you have with the fighting styles you learned. So, you know, it is more circular, absolutely, because I learned kung fu. I learned Shaolin kung fu, and Wing Chun was a core that we learned. You know what I mean? So it was kind of a core of a baseball. But I learned Shaolin kung fu, so I learned animal styles. You know what I'm saying? And I learned Hung Gar forms. You know, and so all of that is in this. That's why what we learned was called Biangzing, metamorphosis. It metamorphosizes. You know, so it's a whole bunch of things. You know what I mean? So I can adapt. If I see fellow fighters do certain moves in Muay Thai, if I see certain things, and a lot of the mentality is the fluidity and also the longevity of things. What is able for longevity? What is fluid? But it's always about the fluidity of the cipher. You know what I mean? And even in my interpretation of Wing Chun, there were things that I interpret that are different than most than teachers. And you know, it's just the way it is. That you know. And when students learn from me, they learn what that is. You know, I tell them what not what is, but how I've learned to and why I'm doing certain things. Because the way I teach students is they may not see me as their only Sifu. I would like them to learn with everybody, and I might not be their only Sifu. They could learn with many other people. You know what I'm saying? Um, you know, because I don't consider myself a grandmaster by any means. You know what I'm saying? So I would expect that if they learn with me as a Sifu, they would learn with others. You know, and hopefully get to a level where they could learn with if they ever get the chance and the money and the time to learn with with legends. You know what I mean? That's a beautiful thing. You know. But I have my own martial philosophy. You know. So with that said, we are at the end of this course. I hope that it was useful. Email me at Sunez97. You know, especially the new student. There was a new student named Micah here. Um, Hopefully he's still listening to email me and everything if he wants to learn more about what I'm teaching, and you know what I mean, and engage, because engaging me outside of the classroom, online, in person, is how you become a student of mine. And just get more. This is, there's a lot in the curriculum. There's plus lessons I give that are unique to what I'm teaching, a curriculum that I share, and also lots of books that we go through. You know what I'm saying? I have a big library, digital library. You know what I mean? So with that said, I'm going to call it in, um, I will build with you all as the week goes on, or when I see you all again next week. All right. Peace.